So welcome back, you wonderful Rugby League supporters out there, for another edition of Turn Out the Lights. Yes, round 16 been and gone. Thousands of you volunteered to go to the stadiums to watch 80 minutes of gladiatorial battle. Yes, they ran at each other well, didn't they? Absolutely superb. And of course, we all know that the footballers in the World Cup are soft by comparison. Let's start with the Warrington Wolves against the Catalans Dragons, shall we? Warrington won by 2 points. It was less a victory and more surviving an armed robbery with key assets, Fulis and Leigh Leopards, taken away from the wealth that Warrington had to offer on the night. Thankfully, Aaron Lindop looks to be okay. Not an ACL. Should be back in a couple of weeks. We wish you well. The Primrose and Blue celebrated like condemned prisoners getting a last-minute pardon, didn't they? Catalans made the trip across the channel, only to find that crushing disappointment has excellent international travel links. Oh, yes. The tries came in every flavour imaginable. There was pure athleticism from Lipowicz, who climbed into the night sky, put the ball out the air like it belonged to him, then made the edge defenders look about as effective as General Zod trying to stop Superman. The wide men had their moments too, with slick finishes from Kotrick, Bentley and Ashton. Then there was the moment that belonged on a Rugby League recruitment poster. Harper Whitey lowered the shoulder, planted a monstrous don't argue straight into Fatape and carried him backwards like he'd forgotten to pay the removal men before crashing over for a crucial second half score. It wasn't so much a try as a public announcement that subtlety had officially left the building. Then came the moment that had everyone out of their seats as Spiro Bichet produced a glorious show and go that had defenders checking Google Maps, slicing through the line as if he'd found a cheat code. For a few glorious seconds, the game was completely in his hands. Support runners were screaming for the ball, and all he had to do was draw the defender and pass. Instead, he decided that this was his personal audition for the highlight reel, took the ball under one arm, ignored everyone in a better position, and ran straight into Ewan Irving. It was the Rugby League equivalent of spending hours cooking a perfect Sunday dinner, then dropping it face first on the kitchen floor 5 seconds before serving. A moment of brilliance immediately followed by a masterclass in how to waste it. Let's go over to Headingley. Leeds absolutely dismantling Hull KR. This wasn't a game, it was a statement. Leeds turned up looking like genuine title contenders. Hull KR looked like they'd accidentally joined the wrong Zoom meeting and spent 80 minutes pretending they knew what was going on. If Leeds needed any help breaking Hull KR down, they certainly got it from the visitors themselves. The Robins chalked up an eye-watering 49 missed tackles, less a defensive effort and more an open invitation. Reece Martin led the unwanted leaderboard with 8 misses on his own, while Elliot Minchella and Petter Hiku wasn't far behind on 7. At time, Leeds were slicing through the line with such ease you'd have thought the defence was operating under a strict look, don't touch policy. You simply can't gift the side like Leeds like this many opportunities and expect to lead with anything other than bruised egos and a long video review on Monday morning. Jake Connor was everywhere. If he'd wandered into a crowd at half time, he'd probably come out with a pint in one hand and setting up a try with the other. Absolutely incredible. In the Battle of Rugby League's last 2 men of steel, Jake Connor once again proved why he's wearing the cape at this moment. Everything he touched turned to gold, pulling the strings with a sort of Midas touch that had Leeds gliding around the park all night. Every pass carried purpose, every kick asked a question, and Hull KR simply had to very few answers. Mikey Lewis, meanwhile, performed like a Ferrari with diesel in his tank. Castleford lost to York. Oh yes, Castleford supporters have become experts in managing expectation. Every Friday they dream of an upset. By Sunday they discuss in effort, character and the positives, the 3 stages of accepting another defeat. Spare a thought for Cody Hunter, whose afternoon briefly took a detour into another postcode courtesy of Semi Malame. Hunter carried the ball with admirable confidence. Malame greeted him like an unpaid bouncer at closing time. It wasn't just a tackle, it was an emphatic reminder that running straight at one of the competition's biggest wingers is a life choice that deserves careful consideration. It is fair to say this tackle will live longer in the memory than his brace of tries that he scored against Castleford Tigers, that of course being Valame. Your Knights finally chalked up a much needed, of course, 4th win of the season after coming from behind at half time, and at the heart of it all was the man whose legs now move at the speed of a continental drift, but his rugby brain is still running on fibre broadband. It's of course Paul McShane. The former Castleford hero slotted in at scrum half and gave a masterclass in game management, reminding every young halfback in the competition that you don't always need blistering pace when you've got timing, vision and a boot full of common sense. He controlled the tempo, picked the right options and generally looked like the only bloke on the pitch who'd already read the script in this one. His body might be asking for a warm bath and an early night, but his rugby IQ is still several chapters ahead of most players half his age. Just ask Dejan Arce in this one. Hull FC nearly nicked one against Wigan. What a performance it was as well from FC. Wigan did what those champion teams do. They weren't spectacular. They weren't even glamorous. Hull FC finally remembered the season had started in this one and gave Wigan an almighty scare. For once, they weren't sleepwalking through the opening exchanges or waited until they were 2 scores behind before deciding to compete. They took the game to the reigning champion, well, not reigning champions, that's KR, to the former reigning champions, matched them physically, and had Wigan looking distinctively uncomfortable for long periods of the game. Unfortunately for the Black and Whites, though, putting the frighteners on Wigan and actually finishing them off are 2 very different things indeed. The Warriors have made a habit of surviving afternoons like this. They're like a, Michael Myers who keeps getting up no matter how many times you think you've seen the last of him. Hull deserve enormous credit, though, for waking up, but they'll know that moral victories don't climb league tables. Credit has to go to both teams because the middle of the field was shut tighter than a Yorkshireman's wallet. Every carry through the ruck was met with a wall of bodies, forcing both sides to abandon thoughts of barging over and instead hunt their points out on the edges. Every try came tucked away in the corners, the reward for stretching disciplined defensive lines to breaking points until Harry Smith decided he'd had enough of sticking to that script. Spotting tired legs around the ruck, the Wigan halfback danced through on twinkle toes, ghosting between exhausted defenders who looked like they were running through wet cement before gliding over for the decisive score. It was the only time all afternoon anyone managed to crack the middle, and it proved the difference between 2 sides that had spent 80 minutes battering each other absolutely senseless. As for Hull FC fans, let's spare a thought for them. They are trapped in sporting purgatory. Oh yes, every defeat comes wrapped in the phrase plenty of positives, which is like saying to the working class, at least you've got good health. Leigh put 40 on Toulouse. Toulouse defended with the kind of enthusiasm people reserve for replying to work emails whilst on a beach in Cyprus. Toulouse defended like passengers trying to squeeze onto the tube after the doors have already started. Closing plenty of effort, but of course, they're not going to be getting on there, are they? Leigh spotted the cracks and kept driving through them until the result was beyond reasonable doubt. Toulouse have developed a worrying habit, haven't they, of arriving for games just as everyone else is thinking about heading home. By the time they finally click into gear, the damage has already been done. It's like turning up for a Sunday dinner after everyone's finished theirs, the roast has gone cold, and also, just to add insult to injury, the microwave is kaput. To their credit, they threw plenty at Leigh after the break, but spotting your opponent a comfortable lead before deciding to play rugby is a strategy with all the success rate of using, of course, a chocolate teapot. If Toulouse could bottle whatever wakes them up for the second 40, they might actually become a very dangerous side. While Toulouse were chasing shadows, Josh Charnley was busy chasing history. The veteran winger crossed 4 times, reminding everyone that finishing tries is an art form, not just a job description. Every score nudged him further clear of Ryan Hall in a race to the finish as the competition's greatest ever finisher. Just as pleasing for Leigh was the sight of Tessie New beginning to resemble, once again, should I say, the wrecking ball that we know he is. After an injury hit start to this season, their powerhouse centre looks sharper with every touch, punching holes through the defensive line, carrying defenders on his back and showing the footwork that made him such a prize signing in the first place. There's another gear or 2 to find, but if this is the warm-up act, the rest of Super League might want to start making alternative travel plans whenever Leigh Leopards come to town. Bradford versus St Helens wasn't really a contest. 40 points to 10 win for the visitors. Saints looked like they'd remembered it's supposed to be one of the biggest clubs in the competition, especially in the second half. Bradford looked like they'd been handed the wrong exam paper and decided to have a go anyway. The first half was anything but polished, more a scramble of stoppages, errors and conversions traded like blows in a pub argument that's gone on for too long. Neither side ever really settled, with momentum flicking between them like a broken light switch and points coming almost as often from penalties and opportunistic finishes as structured play. Amid the chaos, Jacob Douglas made the most of his call up to the Saints side. Oh yeah, showed a clean play of heels, didn't he, to finish a neat try that stood out like the one clean shirt in a bag of washing. It was a rare moment of clarity in an otherwise messy opening 40. St Helens deserve enormous credit for the way they turned the screw after the break. Having been battled by a spirited Bradford side in the opening 40, the Saints emerged for the second half looking like someone had finally plugged them back into the mains. They ran harder, defended with a real intent, and led by the outstanding Jack Welsby. Oh yes, simply suffocating the Bulls. Welsby looked good, gliding into space, chiming into line, and exactly the right moment, scoring tries and playing with the confidence that's been missing for pretty much a long time. It was comfortably his best performance, I believe, this season and perhaps even last season. But before anyone starts putting Jack in that all-important England shirt at the end of the season, this was Bradford, not Wigan. They lie in wait this week. time to back up Jack. And then Wakefield, of course, against Huddersfield, 29 points to 23. A derby played at the pace of two pubs closing at different times. It was brilliant entertainment, assuming you weren't emotionally invested in the game or employed as a defensive coach. Wakefield started like they'd been injected with caffeine and mild contempt. Tom Johnstone scored early, Mike McMeekin followed, and Huddersfield's defence briefly identified themselves as being optional. Huddersfield did, though, briefly remember they were allowed to score tries themselves. Jacob Gagai crossed in the 22nd minute for a superb individual try. Then Colgate added another 6 minutes later, which was either a comeback or just Wakefield politely allowing them to feel involved in the contest. Second half, it was absolute chaos dressed as sport. Tries went in like missed appointments. One for them, one for us, nobody in charge. Sinfield kicked a drop goal, and that looked to be that. Then Oliver Russell went from local dieter to cautionary tale in about 90 seconds. 1 minute, he's nailing a drop goal like he's been personally anointed by the rugby gods. The next, he's floating a lofty pass that nobody in the stadium, not his teammates, not the opposition, not even the laws of physics thought was a good idea. It hung in the air like a public apology, and Josh Rourke treated it with the casual efficiency of a man intercepting both the ball and Russell's dignity. Rourke was gone, game over, and Russell was left staring into the middle distance, wondering how you go from hero to can we pretend that that didn't just happen in one possession. So that's round 16, folks. Some clubs are charging towards the playoffs. Some are clinging to optimism with the determination of someone insisting their scratch card will be the one. And so it all now rolls in to Magic Weekend, where the Betfred Super League becomes a travelling circus of chaos in stadium-sized Technicolor. We rugby league fans now have to party. So let the sport commence. Let's all get ready for magic. We look forward to seeing you there at Super League Raw. Turn out the lights because round 16 is over.